Rue Bennett's story begins long before the first bad decision, long before the drugs, the secrets, or the chaos that she drags behind her like a shadow she never learned to control. To understand the psychology of Rue Bennett, you have to start with something that seems small but quietly shaped everything that followed: untreated ADHD. On the surface, ADHD looks like distractedness, forgetfulness, or impulsivity. But for Rue, it was a constant storm inside her head, a world that moved too fast, too loud, and too intensely. Long before she ever took a pill or sought an escape, she was already living in a constant state of overwhelm. And for a child who cannot slow down their thoughts, cannot organize their emotions, cannot feel steady even for a moment, the world becomes a place that feels impossible to manage. That emotional pressure cooker is where her addiction story truly starts. Rue didn't wake up one day and decide to become an addict. It wasn't rebellion or some desire to fit in. It was self-medication, a desperate attempt to quiet a mind that felt like it was burning from the inside out. People often misunderstand addiction as a moral failure or a lack of discipline. But in Rue's case, the earliest seeds of her dependency were rooted in pain she didn't have the words to explain. ADHD created gaps in her emotional regulation, made it difficult for her to handle stress, and left her hypersensitive to the world around her. Without proper treatment or understanding, those gaps became wounds, and those wounds made her vulnerable to anything that promised relief, even if that relief was temporary, dangerous, and destructive. Rue's first encounter with medication wasn't about getting high. It was about feeling normal for the first time. When she took drugs, the noise in her head softened. The world stopped spinning so violently. She could breathe. What she didn't understand then was that the calm she felt wasn't real calm. It was chemical calm, borrowed calm, a shortcut that would soon come with a heavy price. But for someone drowning, even a dangerous life raft feels like salvation. Rue didn't want a thrill. She wanted quiet. And that's how self-medication became the trap she walked into with open eyes and a hopeful heart. As she grew older, the line between emotional relief and addiction blurred. ADHD made her impulsive, more likely to take risks without fully considering the consequences. Her brain was wired to chase stimulation because stimulation briefly brought focus and clarity. Drugs, tragically, delivered that stimulation in the most extreme way. They became the switch that turned chaos into stillness, at least for a moment. But with each moment of stillness came a longer shadow of withdrawal. With every high, there was a deeper low waiting on the other side, and Rue, who already struggled to regulate her emotions, became powerless against those lows. Withdrawal didn't just hurt physically. It magnified every anxiety, every fear, every insecurity she had ever carried. The drugs that once felt like the answer became the very thing tearing her apart. The psychology of Rue Bennett is the psychology of a person caught in a loop she never learned how to break. ADHD meant she struggled with executive function, the ability to plan, to stay consistent, to follow through. Addiction made those struggles even worse. She wasn't lazy or weak. She was trapped in a brain that constantly sabotaged her attempts to get better. Every time she tried to quit, she faced two battles at once: her untreated ADHD symptoms, which made life feel unbearable, and the crushing emotional and physical pull of the substances she relied on. The truth is, Rue wasn't just addicted to drugs. She was addicted to escape. But escape always comes with consequences, and Rue's relationships were the first things to fall apart. Addiction isolates you. It convinces you that no one understands you, no one can help you, and no one should see your pain. Combined with ADHD's emotional impulsivity, Rue often pushed away the people who loved her most, even when she needed them desperately. She lied not because she enjoyed lying, but because the truth felt too heavy to say out loud. She withdrew not because she didn't care, but because caring made her feel exposed. She hurt people not because she wanted to, but because her world was consumed by one mission: survive the next hour, the next craving, the next wave of withdrawal. Rue's story also reveals the quiet, often unseen connection between mental health and addiction. Many people with untreated ADHD turn to substances without even realizing why. They feel restless, anxious, or emotionally unstable, and drugs seem to patch those cracks. But the temporary comfort masks a long-term disaster. Rue is the embodiment of that disaster. Her addiction didn't replace her ADHD, it intensified it. The more she used, the more her mind destabilized, creating a vicious cycle that pulled her deeper and deeper into dependency. And yet, Rue is not simply a tragic figure. Her story is powerful because it shows the human side of addiction, the side that is rarely discussed openly, addiction as a coping mechanism, addiction as misunderstood self-care, addiction as the language used by people who never learned healthier ways to manage their pain. Her journey highlights how early mental health struggles, when left untreated, can snowball into something much larger and far more dangerous. It shows how a young girl who simply wanted her mind to stop hurting ended up fighting for her life. But even in that darkness, there are moments of clarity. The Rue Bennett we see in her rare honest moments, the one who admits she is scared, who knows she is hurting people, who wishes she could stop, is the real Rue. That Rue is sensitive, intelligent, and deeply emotional. Someone who feels everything more intensely than the average person. That intensity is both her greatest strength and her greatest weakness. It makes her capable of deep love, deep reflection, and deep connection. But it also makes her vulnerable to emotional overload, to anxiety, to depression, and to any escape that promises a brief break from her own mind. The psychology of Rue Bennett teaches us something uncomfortable but important. People often use substances not to feel good, but to stop feeling bad. And when a condition like ADHD goes untreated, the pain can build until anything, no matter how harmful, feels like a solution. Rue's addiction is not just a story of drugs. It's a story of an overwhelmed child slipping through the cracks, a story of emotional survival, a story of what happens when mental health struggles are ignored rather than understood. Rue's path is chaotic, heartbreaking, and destructive, but it is also painfully human. It shows how a young girl who never learned how to manage her racing thoughts or regulate her emotions spiraled into dependency while desperately trying to feel normal. It reminds us that addiction is rarely the beginning of someone's story. More often, it is the last chapter in a long book of unspoken pain. And in Rue's case, untreated ADHD was the silent, invisible weight that pushed her toward the very thing that nearly destroyed her. In the end, Rue Bennett stands as a reminder of how fragile the mind can be and how easily struggles can escalate when people are left to face them alone. Her life is not a warning about drugs alone. It is a warning about what happens when a young person's inner world becomes too heavy to carry without help. Rue never wanted to be addicted. She just wanted the world inside her head to quiet down for a moment. Her story is the echo of countless others who seek comfort in the wrong places, not because they want to ruin their lives, but because they are searching for even a drop of peace. And that, more than anything, is the heart of Rue Bennett's psychology, a girl trying to survive in a mind that never learned how to rest.